Michelle. It is so wonderful to meet you for the first time and also have you on our podcast today. So, for all of our listeners, Michelle is coming to us from Turkey today. Michelle
Mm,
travels all over the world supporting people in their ability to have richer, more meaningful, deeper communication. And so, this, as everyone knows, is one of my passions and something that I wish we learned from a younger age of communication skills. And so for the most part, our listeners are high achieving women entrepreneurs and leaders. And I believe everything that aligns with how we build relationships helps
mhm,
helps us become stronger, more effective, and authentic leaders as well. And also, I'm really finding a trend over the last few years of people opening up and being more vulnerable about not having the communication they desire in the relationships they have at home as well. And how we do anything, we do everything. So that's just a high level introduction to Michelle. But Michelle, why don't you share with us about your journey and your business and just everything? We'd love to hear all about you.
Oh gosh, I'm not used to talking about me. Um, well, just that I've been married for over 30 years. I don't know, he keeps track of the number exactly, but a long time. And that's meant a constant renewal of our understanding of ourselves and each other in order to continue to stay connected over all that time and all the changes that life has bringing us. And yeah, so to me it's a path of a lot of humility to
Mhm.
really look at what stories I'm making up about him or the world and where they're coming from and if those are the stories that really are effective.
Mhm.
And I love what you said because I truly believe, like you said, how we do one thing is how we do everything or something to that effect. And understanding how we're bringing a lot of our baggage to every situation, whether it's leading at work or friendships or our relationships or our parenting, knowing what we don't know or trying to have some technology, if you will, to discover what we don't know is key because in the theory that I teach from, the goal is full aliveness, that we unblock all the energy that got shut down by the nurturing deficits of growing up and the repressive messages or the edicts of how we should be. And as we unblock that energy, it makes space for us to be uh, accepting of other people's differences and allow us to really stay in a process of discovery when we hit a conflict or tension in any relationship.
That's so powerful. So, just back up a little bit, and then we'll come back to that. Share with us about the institute that you actually work with and travel around the world teaching these principles. Can you share a little bit more about the organization and even maybe
Yeah.
you are a psychotherapist. So, what brought you? Because you have a lot of modalities. You have
Yeah.
EMDR, group psychotherapy, in highly intuitive, and those are all incredible modalities. So what has
Mhm.
brought you to where you are right now and the work you're doing with this organization?
That's a good question because it's such a winding path. But
Mm.
basically, the organization, uh, the founders are Hendricks and Helen LaKelly Hunt, and they wrote a book, "Getting the Love You Want." Really, I think it came out like late 70s, early 80s. They did a lot of Oprah. And as they did Oprah, people all around the world, psychotherapists, got really excited about this and said, "We wanna train in this. How do we train?" And then over the last, I guess, 50 years, they've been developing people who can train and certify people in the theory, and the theory has not changed since
I was
the
going
late
to ask,
70s.
has it changed? No, because
It
it's
really
foundational.
hasn't. It's foundational, but there has been more brain research that has validated or given us more ways to explain what's happening that we're seeing in the space between people.
Mm.
And what I'm really excited about is that they have grounded their theory not in psychotherapy, but actually in quantum physics.
Oh, this is powerful. This is
Yeah, it
all
is.
of our jam on this website, ambitious, awakened, and aligned. Yes.
Exactly. And so, like, I don't know if you've been listening to what are they called? Oh, the telepathy tapes, the podcast
Mm.
about that they're finding that nonverbal autistic children are communicating through telepathy. And as I'm listening to this podcast, we're getting more and more information about the validity of how we create our world, and there's so much beyond the material world. And then what's interesting to me is how do we bring that knowledge into our relationships to create the relationships of our dreams instead of recreating the nightmare of our childhood.
That's so powerfully put because really we're so familiar with our past. And so what I think so many people don't understand is we are more apt because it feels safe to our nervous system to get into relationships from our past experiences that aren't actually deeply aligned to the future vision of who we want to be and who we want to
Yes.
become and who we're meant to be. So what's the navigation of that awareness?
Well, if we go to quantum, because I love that, which is,
Mm.
really high level. But basically, when we are in a relationship, we tend to believe the stories that our brain tells us. And our brain can only tell us stories based on what we are aware of, conscious of. And oftentimes that is rooted in our history, the stories that we tell ourselves. So,
Familiar.
right. So when I'm in a relationship and I tell myself a story that Lori doesn't like me, then I'm going to react. I'm going to respond to you in that way. I'm going to make the space between us dangerous and threatening, and it's going to collapse our reality into a particle. But when I can recognize that as just a possibility and I can look beyond that into, well, what else might be possible? Maybe Lori's going to teach me something about myself. Maybe there's something, maybe we're alike in some way, maybe we're different. And how can I navigate what's possible and what I want? Now it becomes
Mm.
a wave of many possibilities. But of course, our wiring is such that if we can define something, we think we will feel safer. So our brain will tell a story, we'll look for evidence to support that story, and we will collapse our reality and limit the possibilities,
Mhm.
which of course is dangerous when you're a leader.
So dangerous, and also in any relationship. So, what do we experience then living in that old paradigm?
Well, we keep recreating it. So like Joe Dispenza, break the habit of what is it, being yourself?
Yes.
When we keep recreating it and re-experiencing it and reinforcing this story. And so it's very difficult to then move beyond the story, especially where everywhere we go and everyone we meet keeps reinforcing our core belief about who we are. Are we worthy? Are we lovable? Will people love us? Will people get us? Will Can we navigate those relationships? All of these stories tend to get reinforced, unfortunately, through academia, where we're trained very, very early on to perform, work for a grade. The grade equals our value. Our value is comparing ourselves to other people. Like it's very subtle and it starts so early.
Mhm.
And we have to have the answer and we have to know an answer, which only collapses reality further.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think I'm curious about your perspective about the conversations that have been opened up around this in the last decade and maybe more, making it um, a conversation that I would say people are hearing, and yet it's still very much information versus integration or consciousness
Mm,
going deeper. And so I find that there's lots of people ready to talk about this or listen in the ways that you're describing, like even studying Dr. Joe. But then there's that next level of how
mhm,
do we embody and integrate this piece?
mhm.
And my
Yeah.
husband and I were actually just talking about this on the weekend of how if you're not careful, you perpetuate literally the same fight over and over again.
Oh, yeah, I know all my lines. I know
I
his
know.
lines.
Exactly. You know, each
I know when I come in, like, oh my gosh, I mean, we're always fighting the pattern. Always, like, "Oh my god, we're in our pattern again. What how
yeah.
can we do something different?"
Yes. And how do we
Mm,
break that pattern? So for people that are, which I think is so many, are in that information and curiosity and what's the first step?
well, I don't think a lot of people like the first step.
Yeah,
I really
I'm
don't,
sure it's
because
uncomfortable.
self-righteousness is feels way, way better.
So much better, Michelle. It's
I
so
know,
much better.
I know, I love it, it's my favorite. Um, but the first step is to reimagine our partner,
Tell me more.
or reimagine really anybody, to move into the possibility of, "Wow, how lucky am I? Look at what you did." Not look at what you didn't do. "I hate this. This made me grumpy," but really focus on what's going well. And again, we're trained from very, very early on to look at the best answer and eliminate all the bad ones, but
Mhm,
to kind of problem solve. And so my husband is a constant project for me to problem solve, which only creates more of what we hate. And so it's like a commitment, and this is a hygiene thing, like we brush our teeth a couple times a day. It's a hygiene thing to wake up first thing in the morning and look for what I love about it. Even if that takes a lot of effort, and then to tell him.
mhm.
And his challenge is then to reflect it back so he can really take it in, because a lot of people just go, "Oh, thank you," or dismiss it. Right? They don't really take in, "No, I really want you to hear how meaningful it is to me." Like, he took my dad his new phone because 'cause I'm traveling. It's like a phone for dementia, and then it wasn't charging, so we went back out there to make sure it was charged, like, and it's easy to take that for granted, right? And to focus on the fact that I'd rather have him here with me than
Mhm.
there. But instead, I was like, "No, I really want him to know that's really meaningful. I feel cared for, I feel loved." And then what happens is that I do feel cared for and loved,
Mhm.
and I don't feel
Oh, interesting.
grumpy.
Because now you're looking for the thing that you've already highlighted.
Exactly, we're
Right.
training our brain
Mhm.
because we have this, it's called the reticular activation system, which you're probably familiar with, but for the listeners who might not be, it's basically the thing, like, if you decide you want a new dog, you will see that dog everywhere. And you'll
Everywhere.
think, "Did I go into another reality? Was this dog always around and I just didn't know?" But it's because we trained our brain to look for that dog, and then we see that dog. So when we train our brain to look for what's going well, to celebrate our partner, to send appreciations, to receive appreciations, this changes our brain.
Yes. I love
And I actually think it changes our reality. I think we actually
that.
change into another quantum reality.
It does absolutely change our reality. So this again, I feel like is every relationship we have in our life, whether this
Yeah.
is our children, our spouse, our friends, the people that we work with, because I do, again, I see leaders that are, perpetuating looking for not always the ways to celebrate and to enable and expand the people around them, the opposite. So what you're since you're in the biology, let's go there. What is it about the way we're hardwired that it is more natural to seek out the evidence of not what's great versus the evidence of something awesome?
Yeah, well, we're wired with a negativity bias, and thank goodness we are. That's how we are here. We our brains are wired so that if a snarling animal comes into the village, it's May and it's drizzling. The next time it's drizzling, it's May, a furry animal comes in, a snarling something like our brain goes, okay, let's run the program. This is danger. We have to kill it, convert it, or run it off. Then we can decide if we were right or wrong
Mm.
because we have to survive. So
Mhm.
we're wired for survival, and our survival strategies are often rooted in our childhood to make ourselves smaller, to withdraw, or to basically expand our energy, get louder, scare things away. Perhaps it's like to fawn, appease, but we get wired in these survival strategies
Absolutely.
and then we just keep using them.
Mhm. How do we get people to step into the awareness of that?
Well, I mean, I think through education is a huge piece. When we do our workshops for couples or individuals and they really get to unpack this
Mm.
and identify their reactivity pattern, where it comes from, identify where they are holding basically forms of self-hatred,
Mm.
you know, self-judgment, fears that, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, I'm whatever that is. And then because we don't like that, we tend to project it out.
Mm.
So we have to identify what are these negative beliefs about ourselves that we're carrying? Where do they come from? How do we work with that? And then we also have to look at the repressive messages that we got from society as well, in terms of what makes somebody likable, what makes somebody lovable, what will get our needs met in the world. And so as we unpack all that and we really drill in, where is this coming from?
Mhm.
And what do I want? Now, what do I want? And we work, especially as a team, with our friend, a colleague, a partner. I know people believe they can heal themselves. I think it's much harder to heal ourselves.
Yeah, I heard a quote yesterday, "We don't heal in isolation." Healing is an inner job. Healing is an independent job, but we don't do it in isolation.
I really believe that. I do believe we can grow.
Yes.
And this is a kind of, I don't know if we have just semantics here, but we can grow, we can reclaim parts of ourselves, but we can't really know we're lovable without feeling loved.
That's so true. Yes, because that's the mirror to experiencing that emotion, right?
Yeah.
And also only at the depths that we can love ourselves. I'm sure that you find that, and that's part of the healing journey. I've certainly come to know that I can't give love at any deeper level than I feel it even towards myself.
It's
So
very
that
challenging. Yeah.
yeah, that's where that healing piece really comes in, right? So tell
Mhm.
us about your workshops. What do those look like? What's that experience? What's the journey of the experience?
Well, what's really cool is whether you do it as an individual or you do it as a couple, is it's the same basic content where we're learning just the basic communication skills, which any system would have, which is listening and validation, empathy, stepping into their world, making sense of it. So we learn those tools, but then we use those to have conversations to unpack these other things I'm talking about. So identifying where you you do have like you had challenges as a child, whoever they were with,
Mhm.
and how that left you then with this unmet need
Mm.
that you are bringing into every relationship unconsciously, typically. A need to be heard, a need to say what I think rather than what I should think, a need to have enough time and space for myself. These kinds of things we get trained out of believing that we can do that.
So it's
So,
really about that unmet need first.
yes, we want to understand what's the unmet need that I brought into well, I bring it everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm adopted. I was adopted by two people who today we would say are pretty firmly on the spectrum,
Mm.
potentially shut down that way because of trauma or intergenerational nurturing deficits. But they adopted this little baby and then they tried, they read that little Spock book. I don't know
Yes.
if you know that book,
Yes, I
where you
do.
like kind of raise a baby like a robot.
Right.
And so it impacted me on many, many levels. But
Mhm,
at the most fundamental level is like I don't belong. I have to
mhm,
earn love, earn my place. I watched Orphan Annie way too young
mhm,
and sort of drew this connection.
mhm,
So then once we identify, okay, I bring this will I belong question to every place I go.
mhm.
And I have to become conscious of that and challenge that and look for where I do belong and look for what's going well and stop my brain from looking for the danger and the threat.
Mhm.
So the workshops are usually dialogical. So even if you go to an individual workshop, you're working with other individuals to have these conversations, to unpack unmet needs, to unpack the repressive messages. So, you know, it could be like, dancing is evil or dangerous, or my sexuality is dangerous, or I need to be nice. That's a common one for girls.
Mhm.
Be nice, get along with everybody, don't have any needs. For men, it's like, don't be too threatening, but be tough and don't cry. So,
Don't show your emotions. Feelings
right.
are speak. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the gender roles are very rigid in a lot of cultures.
Yes.
That's and then they're reinforced.
Mhm,
So, we have a dialogue. For instance, one of the dialogues is like, the message I received growing up that felt repressive, and we just give them the first part of that,
mhm.
and then they fill it in, and then they're mirrored, and then the person is says something like, "Am I with you?" "Did I get it?" And then they can say, "Well, I wanna add or emphasize this," and then that's mirrored. Am I with you? "Yes." "Okay. Is there more?" And then they keep going and they start thinking about, well, an example where I got that message is. And they tell the story, they're mirrored, and then we go into and the way that shows up in my current relationships and what I want my message to be. And we start to really unpack. And as it's mirrored back, they're processing, they're getting deeper and deeper into the stories that they're creating and reinforcing and what they want, and a new message I could give myself. And if I really believe then then one behavior that you might see me do, and we start to get behavioral to reinforce the new message.
Powerful.
It's so powerful. I mean,
Mm.
people just have such insights into this, we call it a core scene that most couples, the ones where we know all our all our lines, and they start to see beyond the core scene to what's possible and how it could change and the way they're showing up and creating what they don't want. Yeah, it's really a powerful, so it's really the same workshop. It's just that you're doing the work with a colleague or a friend or
Mhm.
stranger versus doing it with your partner.
Right. Would you say, this is one of my often questions is nurture nature. So
Mhm.
we have obviously our environments that impact us. Thank you for sharing your story. That's so meaningful and powerful and helps people when they hear what someone else's journey was. Because I grew up in a different type of environment, and yet my own story was one of I don't belong. And that
Yeah.
same experience based on that story that I created or felt, then, we may have had many of the same life experiences and relational experiences because for a long time it was like just shrink,
Mm.
just, fit in, people please, do what you need to
Yeah.
do to make sure that you don't ruffle any feathers and try to find that sense of belonging. And that's where I really love Brené Brown's work about,
Yeah.
well, really the sense of belonging is finding that within ourselves. And that for
Mhm.
me has been a big part of the journey back to understanding that's where it was all along.
Yeah.
We don't learn that as children either. So that story is so powerful, but I've often wondered, you get these adapted behaviors from our experiences, our cultural environment, our family environment. But then where does the nature part pop in? Because the
Mhm.
nurture part, I feel like I can look at that now and walk through the experience that you just described for our listeners. What do you do when it's nature?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think this is so interesting, especially like the telepathy tapes,
Mm,
because here you have nonverbal beings who are
right.
seen and treated as if they're incompetent, and and biologically, they're really challenged. Like, there's more and more evidence that they're not fully integrated into their body.
Mm.
So they're spiritual beings trying to be in a physical body, and they're struggling.
Oh, that's I can sense that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think that what I love about grounding this in quantum physics
Mm,
is it's both and. It's not either or. It's both nature and nurture,
mm,
and they influence each other. So our thoughts influence our biology influences our thoughts. So we need to look at it from all of these lenses.
mhm, and really
Yeah.
creating safety no matter what lens it came from,
Yeah.
so that people can expand and evolve.
Yeah, and that's where growth is really critical because if I cannot grow safety inside of myself,
Mhm,
then I'm going to unconsciously be creating unsafety wherever I go and reinforcing. So it is important to grow our sense of safety.
mhm.
Yeah.
I would think that's the foundation, is really that work of the nervous system feeling safe and growing, expanding what feels familiar as you walk into the work you're doing so that, relationally we feel safe to explore these new possibilities, these new stories, which we haven't heard. And that's where I think it's so great to have heard you say that you still can get in those repetitive like, I love that you shared that because I feel like for people listening, sometimes it's, "Okay, I know I'm there. I know that something like this would give me so much support to change the stories, which ultimately shift the relationships. And we have one life. Like this work is so important. We have one life to experience, and we are meant to experience it with beautiful human relationships.
Mhm.
This is so it can be so beautiful, and yet I know you see this too, so many people walking around sad in their marriages, frustrated in their marriages, frustrated with the people they work with.
Mhm.
Like, I just it's so worth it, and it's actually not that complicated.
No, it's often compare it to golf, even though I don't golf. I have no idea
Well,
what
now
golf
that
is.
might be complicated.
But I'm saying but golf is like you take a stick and you hit a ball into a hole, and most people go, "Well, it's pretty simple." It is simple,
Yeah, I love that.
but it's a daily practice to get artful at it.
Mhm,
And so that we need to reinforce the biology changes through behavior.
mhm.
So if we are not doing the appreciations every day, gratitude journals, I mean, the research is really, really powerful
Very
on
powerful.
what that does. But if we're not doing that, we're just going to slide back into our survival strategies.
Mhm,
And so it's really a commitment that we make to ourselves to look for what's going well and to retrain our brain away from the drama, the self-righteousness. I mean, we get a lot of I get a lot of juice from that, the stories about this person and what they did to me and yeah.
it's
But
a
no, I mean,
it's funny because
we're
I was saying to someone the other day, there's no question it's more fun. It
yeah.
it's hard work to do the work, and
Yeah.
yet, on the other side of it, the joy, the fulfillment, the experience, the laughter, the fun, it's and just feeling the love, and it's the real stuff of a human experience. And
Yeah.
it's a little messy in the middle. I was speaking to
Yeah.
a really good friend who's going through a marital situation, and that's what I she's like, "Oh, it just feels so hard." And I'm like, "Yes, and so worth it."
Mhm.
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 It really is.
Well, it is, and I mean, we only learn through pain that we're something about the way we were
Wild.
built, something about the way we were built. I mean, my reactivity, it's always negative first,
Mm,
like kind of a poor me story for a while. And then I kind of work my way through like, well, I mean, maybe there's a little bit more to this story than just my husband is, whatever, all the
mhm,
things I hate. Um, like maybe there's more to the story, but that is it's hard to know it's worth it until you're on the other end, until you're on
mm,
the other side of the storm. Because when you're in the storm, especially if the storm is year after year, or your partner really isn't willing to partner with you, that's really the key thing in the theory that we teach is that m- when we're raised in school system or we're trained to be psychotherapists, we're trained to diagnose and treat. It's a
right.
medical model and it's find what's wrong and fix it. And that is how most of us operate in the whole world. And then we bring that to our marriage. And of course, it really doesn't work because no one likes to be fixed. No one.
Nobody likes to be fixed.
No one likes it. And so we really are moving towards a relational paradigm where everyone makes sense all the time. And
Mhm,
if I don't understand their behavior or if I feels threatening, I need to take a breath and give them the benefit of the doubt and listen. And
mhm.
so even the grumpiest, rudest jerk has their own story going on.
Yeah, really, when we get up close to every human being, it's hard not to love them. When you
Yes.
get up close and you understand what their internal stories and challenges are that have created the experience you're having with them.
Yes. And so what people go through the workshop and they're like, okay, I get my stuff, I get their stuff.
Mhm.
Now what?
Yeah, I
I
would think
still want them to be fixed.
of course.
you know,
Of course.
I don't want to be the one to heal them. That doesn't feel right because
Mhm.
I want them to be the parent and nurture all my childhood stuff, but I don't wanna do it back.
Mm.
I don't wanna mommy them, that's a big one for women, right? I don't wanna be their mother, but I do want them to be my daddy and be like
Right.
the strong provider, protector, the gentle, like I want my husband to be all these things, but I won't acknowledge that I want that. I just feel like, well, no, I'm supposed to have that.
Yeah, and
Uh,
I would think a lot of it is just that we don't have the awareness.
yeah.
I guess, though, you're saying even if we have the awareness, we don't always acknowledge.
We don't like
We
it.
don't like it.
I said on a podcast a couple weeks ago, like, the biggest issue most couples have is an attitude problem.
Oh, explain that.
Just that they're coming from this individual paradigm, which is, I want my unmet needs met, but I don't want to stretch and grow to meet yours.
Right.
But that is how it's designed. We are partnered with the person where the thing they need the most, we also need, but we have different adaptations that we have to stretch and grow out of in order to meet each other's needs. And so if we don't work as a team, it just feels terrible.
Explain to me what partnership means from your perspective.
Oh, well, I mean, this is such a great question,
Mm.
and I could try to define it for myself. But more importantly, is that every relationship is so unique. It's made of two unique individuals, and we're only conscious of about half of our stuff. So there's parts that you can see in me that I can't see. There's parts that I don't let you know about me that I know about. And
Right.
there's a whole lot of stuff that's unconscious. So when we come together in a partnership and we say, yeah, I think we want to team up and be partners, it's our job to figure that out together. We have to figure that out because no one else can really give us an answer. And it changes. That's the really bad part is Steve and I will figure something out. It will work for a while. And then something will change and that's not working anymore. And we have to go back to the drawing board and figure it out.
Mhm. Yeah, it's that we're constantly evolving as
Yeah.
individuals, right? So then when we come together as a couple, obviously we're going to constantly evolve, and we don't do that at the same time, at the same speed, in the same
Right.
way. So I've
Yeah. We're
often
shaped by our interactions with the world. And then we come
Mhm.
back home and now what?
And now what? Exactly. So it's really is a decision that you're in a partnership and you're going to be committed to working through these types of practices just like you would go to the gym or you would meditate
Yeah.
on a consistent basis. And, being curious and exploring, I think is what I'm hearing you say as well, is almost a constant state of curiosity to what's next, what's now, what do we need, what do I need, what does he
Yeah.
need or she.
Right. Because in the quantum, we're in process.
Right.
So I'm in process, my partner's in process, our relationship is in process. And so we have to constantly be curious and putting energy into what we want to create. And I think this is why there is no one relationship book out there. Like if there was an answer, it would be so much easier.
Mhm.
But it's more like there's a series of technologies that we can use to discover where we are right now, how our past is present, what we want to create for our future, and get a lot of positive energy to then keep moving forward towards that vision.
Mm.
And so it's more about technology and process.
Mhm.
And what's cool is that in these workshops, it's all baked in. So you get a good dose of technologies to help you figure it out. You don't have to, sometimes men like our workshops a lot if they're like engineering minded because
Mm.
there's charts. It's like pick one of these 10 things, and it's
Nothing like a
not like,
great chart. Nothing like a great chart.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
sometimes you're in couples therapy and the therapist asks you, what do you need? And
you don't know.
just be nice. I want her to be nice to me.
Mhm.
Like, so it's really nice to have the technologies to sort of like unpack this and then take answer 7A and put it over here and
Mhm.
start to create a story and then share that with your partner.
Mhm.
So it's really about understanding that, the technologies and the process that help us create the relationship that we want and knowing that will change.
That's so, so powerful. Do you do virtual workshops?
Yeah, we do. We
Do
do
you?
virtual workshops. We recorded a full retreat this August.
Mhm.
And so we have an 8-week workshop. It's 3 hours a week and it's self paced. So you could go 6 hours one week and take a week off or do it slower. But it's all the technologies, all the worksheets. You get to see actual couples doing the dialogues before you go to try one.
Mm.
And so you can do it all digitally.
That's
And then
incredible.
we have office hours so that if people get stuck, they can get support.
Right. That's amazing. So we will in the show notes show how people can get to that
Yes.
because as I said, we're in Canada. Right now Michelle's in Turkey. She's from the US. She's traveling all over the place and although you have certified practitioners in
All
Canada
over the
as
world.
well,
Yes.
all over the
All over the
world for
world.
whoever's listening. But I really do think that virtual would be such an awesome opportunity for some of our listeners. I read that something that you sent me that your mission is to empower people to create authentic and harmonious relationships with
Mhm,
themselves and others. And I thought
mhm.
that was such a powerfully put statement, the harmonious piece, because we're all about alignment and awakening.
Yes.
And that was what really drew me to you, as I feel like there's such a connection there. And at the
Mhm.
beginning, when you started speaking about being alive, I just again this reality that every day you want to feel awake and alive. And the
Yes.
relationships in your life and the consciousness you put towards them is life-changing and so
Mhm.
worth the work that it takes to get there in every capacity of that. So I love the work you're doing in the world. I'm so
Thank
grateful
you,
for this
Laurie.
conversation. I'm so excited to get to know you even more. So let's stay in touch and
Yes.
please keep me posted on anything that you're doing that you want to share with our audience and we'll continue to keep them informed. And we're
Thank you,
glasses
Laurie.
sisters, so for those of you that see us on the podcast, you'll see that we both like our big chunky glasses. Your glasses are phenomenal. Is there any last thought you would like to leave with our listeners today?
Well, I just want to appreciate you. I love what you're doing. I love how you're bringing together all these pieces that are so critical for especially women, but all leaders to have a fulfilling life. So, thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you, and you too, Michelle. I so appreciate you. Thank you for your time.